There goes again that royalty-free music that just is becoming the soundtrack to my life.
That jam's a bop, and we're not going to tell everybody that we did it twice because I didn't hit the big red record button because Seth's not here and we don't know what we're doing.
No, we're flying by the seam of our pants here because breaking news, brand new segment, a spin-off of the Balluminati podcast has begun.
Pew, 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 pew.
Yes, friends, we have a new segment here presented by the Daily Stampede in our new year, new format. We have a new show for everyone this week, a new weekly show hosted by myself and Anthony Vito here. On the other
I can't
side,
believe you let us do our own show. This is
right.
way better than writing 1,000 words of it. So, to be honest,
Seriously, this is a passion project for both Vito and myself. As you can affectionately see, it's called the USF Athletics Round-Up. Normally, under normal circumstances, Vito and I have to write a lot of words to recap what happens with USF Olympic sports. And so now, in a new format, coming to you live every week, we will be talking anything and everything related to USF Olympic sports, putting those cast of characters into the limelight, making sure they get their time in the spotlight, and maybe cracking a few jokes along the way.
and maybe a few frosty beverages.
Ooh, I won't be joining you tonight. I have no alcohol in my fridge aside from PBR hard coffees. So
What a drink.
those are special occasions. Those are, you know how some people have like a fancy like bottle of wine that they're gonna crack open for like fancy occasions. Mine's a PBR hard coffees.
Unbelievable. I mean, everyone's got to have their niche. Hard coffees and high noons.
There you go. But yes, so every week, just we'll be discussing anything and everything having to do with those USF Olympic sports. Primarily, we're going to be looking to recap the previous week's sports. For those that aren't in tune to the athletics calendars, a lot of stuff happens between usually Thursdays going to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sometimes leading into a Monday as well. So we want to make sure we put those student athletes in the spotlight, do a recap of the previous week, discuss what happens, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Then we'll even look ahead, see what's going on around the conference. There's a lot of changes that have happened this past year for the conference that we'll talk about here soon. And hopefully the spring of rings can continue for USF because boy, do we need it with how football season did. So
In about 30 days, the bat sports kick off. And once baseball and softball goes, we're full on in track and field season, both men's and women's tennis, men's and women's golf. It really kicks off to a very busy spring. So we figured this is a lot easier than writing. Not sure anyone was reading those. So it's really nice to be able to talk about these sports. We can talk about some of the more successful sports on campus. And we'll still dedicate football, recruiting, men's and women's basketball to the Balluminati podcast that we'll still record on Tuesdays. But especially for basketball, we'll still touch on those up until those seasons end. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, it should be fun though. But we do want to kick it off by recapping from a little bit ago the fall sports, and we'll start with the good. The good sports, I should say. The kickball sports, the football, the soccer, men's and women's soccer, both had pretty all right seasons to some respects. The women's team in particular had what we would probably consider to be a down year under Coach Denise. They went 8-9. Not really too many out of conference wins, which is rare under her jurisdiction. They lost to Florida Atlantic. They lost to Florida. They lost to Georgia. They beat Miami, which was a sizable win at times, but there was just a lot of lack of consistency for Denise's squad, and you can kind of see the consequences of some star athletes graduating the last couple of years and not necessarily having a ready-made striker ready to go right after a few all-time leaders leave the program. So overall, they went 8-9, like I said. They went 5-3 in the conference, though, which qualified them to go to the postseason, where they had a rough one, Vito. I won't sugarcoat it.
We were pretty excited about it, and then they got just completely annihilated by the number 1 seed, 5-0 SMU.
Oh no, that wasn't the 1 seed.
That was the 6 seed, right? SMU
Yes,
was the 1 seed in the men's. The women's, they were the 6 seed,
they were the
and
6 seed.
they put up a bagel and lost 5-0, which was very, very tough to see.
Right. And the shameful thing was it was within stretch for a little bit. It was 2-0 at one point, and both the goals that SMU scored were just world class. Like they weren't like not to say that Sidney Martinez, USF starting goalkeeper, isn't a bad goalkeeper by any stretch. These were really good goals that they had scored, and USF was making a charge and trying their damnedest to try to bring something to the back of the net. And with about 2 minutes to go until halftime, and again, for those who aren't too initiated on college soccer, it's a countdown clock, and so there's no extra time. It is 45-minute first half, 45-minute second half, no extra time given whatsoever. And with about 2 minutes to go, USF had a free kick, bounced out. Had everyone pushed up, and SMU striker took the ball, dribbled it 90 yards, and just left Sidney Martinez one-on-one. And with about 10 seconds to go to the half, they scored and made it 3-0. And you could kind of tell it really deflated the team at halftime. In fact, to the point where Denise pulled Sydney in the second half and let the backup goalie get some playing time. So overall, not a great season by any stretch of the imagination, but there's still a lot to really like about what Denise has built with USF's women's soccer program. They'll be back. There's really no worry about it. It's just they had a down year after losing some of the best players of their program's history. Lo and behold, That's going to happen.
It's hard to build back up, and I mean, Sidney Martinez, very well decorated here at USF, couple conference championships. For a while there, she was completely undefeated her sophomore and junior year. So it's just tough when you lose so much talent. You can only reload so much, but the right coach is in that program, and she's so that she wants to be here. So that's a good thing looking towards the future. So we're hoping for a rebound next season.
Right. And one of those star pieces that we'll probably hear a lot of for the next couple of years is Kiara Hahn. She was our, I believe, true freshman. Or no, is she a true freshman? I should have had this up. Oh no.
I think you're right.
Had it up. I'm pretty sure she was a true freshman because I do not remember her name at all throughout the year before. I'm going to double check. I'm doing this live. No, she's a sophomore.
True sophomore. Yeah. Okay.
True sophomore. She came onto the scene this past year and really took off, and was actually United Soccer all midfield or all conference all region midfielder, which is a pretty high distinct honor. They divide these things up by region. They don't do just an all American team necessarily. So for her to be recognized, she was all conference, all region. She's going to be a gal that we will hear a lot of in the future, as well as Vivian Bissett. She has also kind of came into the scene a little bit more. She started quite a bit this past season, and she has been consistent as a defender for USF. And I think she was on the weekly honor roll or the player of the week honors quite a bit this past year. So two gals you'll hear a lot of coming in the future. And Denise is reloading. Women's soccer will be fine. Don't worry about them. Mm-hmm. But Vito, let's talk about men's soccer.
Let's talk about men's soccer. So last year they went 6-7-2 and missed out on the conference championship or tournament altogether. We were talking about Butte-Horn, what was going to happen this season. They started out the year a bit of a rough stretch, and then they really kicked it in during conference play. Now, something interesting in conference play for men's soccer, I know we're always thinking about what the new AAC is going to look like in football, but Steeg, we actually had some new conference mates this season in men's soccer, including Charlotte and FIU, who are two very good men's programs. We also had FAU and no FAU.
I think it was. I'm going to look that up while you're doing that as well.
Yeah. So there were 3 top 25 teams that played in this conference this season: SMU, Charlotte, and Tulsa. And so USF went 9-7-4, 5-1-3 in conference, and with a really great 6-2-2 record at home. So they were able to improve and go to the conference tournament this season, and they made it all the way to the final, where they lost to FIU, was the 1 seed, 2-0. But along the way, they beat Charlotte and they beat SMU, which were two very, very good programs, in addition to beating Tulsa in the regular season. For a while there, they had 3 straight wins going into the tournament, and then they were up to 5 before losing to FIU there in the final in Miami. They were able to get to the tournament, which is their 22nd in program history, where they beat Hofstra 4-2, and then they lost to the number 1 national seed Kentucky 4-0. But again, when you play Kentucky, when you play the number 1 seed, it's going to happen. It's a tough place to go play. It's a tough place. And it's, again, you just pull a really hard hand when it comes to your conference. Your NCAA tournament seeding, which just generally it tends to be a theme around here.
They did taxes and USF Athletics being horribly seeded.
Yep, USF Wizard is correct. They beat Charlotte in the regular season 2-1, and then they also beat them in the AAC first round. So, not a bad showing. They had a pretty decent season, and at the end of the year, Sal Mazzaferro, defender, got drafted in the 3rd round by Austin FC in the MLS Super Draft, and he is my player of the year. He played in every game and logged 1,704 minutes out of a possible 1,710. I don't know how you do that.
They took him out with 1 minute left before the end of the game, every time, just to waste time and give him at least a little bit of a break.
That is the true Iron Man right there. But they had 4 shutouts this year, so he definitely assisted in that. So going into next year, there were 4 transfers that were announced over the past couple days. Max Wilkins is a forward from Georgia State. Cam Peel, a goalkeeper from Elon. Mikael Keys, a center back from Inter Miami MLS Next, which I had no idea what it was until Steeg told me during our pre-show notes. So Steeg, take it away. What is Inter Miami MLS Next?
Yes. So for those who follow basketball, it's very similar to what the AAU circuit is. So a lot of these kids, they obviously attend high school, but they also attend academies and club sports and everything like that. And because the high school circuit and the high school men's soccer is kind of at times, there's a lot of these clubs that just basically pull these kids into developmental academies and just let them flourish there. And a lot of these are sponsored by MLS and USL and NWSL clubs as well. And so you'll hear a lot of them in there, Inter Miami Next, or Jacksonville's the Jacksonville Battery, and it's sponsored by the Jacksonville Armada, which is our USL team. So you'll see a lot of those kids kind of come through. Tampa has, I think, 3 or 4 in the region as well. So you'll see those names pop up a lot of the Tampa Bay, Fusion or whatever it is. But yes, basically David Beckham's baby squad, which Romero's that situation's hilarious. And if we have time at the end, we'll dabble in Inter Miami talk for a second of what happened there. But yeah, so for mid soccer, that's you'll also see it on the women's side too. But it's basically they're just AAU teams, AAU clubs. They're better ways for these kids to get a national footprint as well, because they'll compete with Charlotte and New York and South Carolina and wherever else they're going to go to.
It's a nice little program, so it's good that we got him. And then, speaking of, you mentioned Jacksonville. We got Tyler Richardson from the center midfielder from JFC MLS Next. Duval. Steeg and I are long life Inter Miami fans, so we definitely are interested in the former. So yeah, those are the transfers that got brought in during this week. So I didn't actually see. Do they have some spring ball happening? Let's check that out in the good old show notes.
I don't think they have any spring.
I don't see anything scheduled.
There is going to be, I believe, there's going to be a shift in the scheduling for collegiate soccer. They're going to basically do a split season of fall and spring, which is more akin to what happens in the high school and AAU circuits, anyways. Featuring Vito's cat. They did have the cat's always in. But yeah, they'll do like a spring roster and a spring schedule as well. It's not going to be as competitive. It's probably going to be a lot of just scrum matches and quick things here and there. I don't think there's going to be actually any conference play in the spring. But I'd have to go double check what the NCAA officially ruled on that. But good anyways, because a 9-month break for soccer is stupid, especially because it's a very competitive sport, and a lot of these off-season trainings mostly require these scrimmages anyways. So good thing there for our men's and women's team.
Yeah, exactly. I double checked. Yes, they did play FAU and UAB as well, and tied both those matches and tied FIU in the regular season. Interesting way, but I remember that came up and we were like, oh, are these all conference games? So I'm interested to hear more about how that happened, why men's soccer ended up having new AAC and how the new American's going to be, because based on these programs, even though it doesn't seem like they are very, very, very good. So men's soccer will be a very fun conference going forward. And that just will help in recruiting here at USF as well.
Right.
Who doesn't love sunsets at Corbett? One of my favorite.
Sunsets at Corbett are the best. But yeah, they did initiate the new AAC members into the men's soccer programs. So again, very strange. Don't know why they did it a year early. There was kind of not really a rhyme or reason to it. But I think it was just kind of like a soft introduction for those programs. And of course, FIU, who Florida International University, is going to bring in incredible international students who are really good at soccer. And lo and behold, they are going to run shit in this conference for a while. Yeah, they're really good at men's soccer. This is going to be a tough conference for Bob to compete in the years coming.
I do choose to be optimistic and think that this rise from year over to year, we're going to continue this little trend and become the premier. Here's the other cat. Become the premier program in the new American Conference. I just choose to be optimistic.
Are we all just naively optimistic at the end of the day?
Okay, wasn't that Greg Allman who said that to you?
Yeah, God, that's still my head. That's still the funniest thing any professional media member has ever said to me.
Too hilarious.
But Vito, let's talk about the bad.
We're
going to talk about volleyball.
Oh,
yeah, we'll talk about volleyball, and then we'll get. So volleyball is under year 3 under Coach Jolene Shepherdson. They had a improved year, but not a very good year. Again, under volleyball. We will definitely have Colin on the show at some point to do his volleyball spiel, because he could go for 45 minutes about the problems that have arose for women's volleyball. And this year they showed improvement. Last year they were kind of just absolutely dead in the water from the get-go, but women's they had good showings for a few games for the non-conference slate. In fact, they actually won. Let me count that.
They won 4 conference games this year. Last year, they only won the 1. So incremental improvement.
Incremental. I believe they won more out of conference games than they lost, which is cool. They didn't beat anyone of note because they schedule like some pretty bad teams, but in years past they would lose to those teams. So that's always an improvement. But they really, really struggled again this year. They have good talent across the board, and they're young, but they're just still completely struggling to just put any sort of just consistency together. And we literally celebrated it like it was a Super Bowl. They won 2 conference games in a row, which I had to really dig to find when that happened last. I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago was the last time they won 2 conference games in a row. They have been very downtrodden.
And they didn't only win that first conference game they won at Tulsa. They won 3-0, which was shocking. Then they came back, did a comeback victory to win against Memphis the next week, and then dropped their next 6 sets against SMU, and then UCF, of course, who is a perennial power. So losing UCF and then Houston, who was the top of the conference this year, will, I don't want to say help, because you take away really good talent. It's hard to get talent in, but we're going to see what can happen next year. But yeah, there's been some good talent that comes in. It's just that's why I want to get Colin in on here to talk volleyball, because sometimes you have some really good pieces and they play really, really well, and it's just the ball goes where it goes, and you can't figure it out, and that's just a very unfortunate thing that can happen. And I'd love for him to talk about, hey, this is what we can look for in the future. Here's what recruiting looks like, and here's how we can bring volleyball into the new AAC.
Right. And right now, I believe CC Clausen has another year. CC Clausen has been basically the workhorse for USF volleyball for the last couple of years. She is a by registration senior, but I believe she's going to have another year because of the COVID stuff and all that shit that happened. But she's basically been the workhorse. She leads the team in a lot of the major statistics in volleyball. But they did get a nice piece of a bonus to call out, which is Michaela Washington. For those that were at the IPF ceremony, she was the one that gave a speech on behalf of the Student Athletics Council. She has been just an absolute gem on and off the court. And so for her to come up a little bit more and be more of a vocal face for volleyball, I think is going to be a welcomed addition as well. But yeah, they've got a lot of issues to work through. But unlike football, I think you can kind of give Coach Joe at least another year, because she did inherit this team that was very, very bad right during COVID. So her and Jeff Scott basically took over in like a 2-week different period. And so for both of them, they need time to kind of get the players in, especially because you are 1 year behind already with the COVID stuff and all of that. So we'll see. But I don't want to, slander anyone or anything on this show. We're going to try to stay as naively optimistic as possible. But I will say that Coach Joe's seat is a little bit hotter than normal because, let's face it, we hadn't won a set against UCF in like 12 years. And we hadn't won a set in a while, and 4-14 in the conference in year 3 isn't very good. And we've seen some progress, but we need to see a lot of progress going forward. Hopefully a weaker American Athletic Conference might pay some dividends to buy some time there. And Vito, I think it's time to address the ugly, the very ugly.
Ugly.
Well, you look up the new AAC schools for volleyball. Let's talk about the absolute just travesty that is cross country. We obviously don't shine that much light on this program for a reason. It is by far and away, I think, USF's worst sport. And it's very strange to think of this, because it's coached by the same gentleman who is leading around one of the biggest turnarounds in USF athletics. But for some godforsaken reason, we're just really bad at cross country. And it's recruit faster people. It seems like just a no-brainer. But for some odd reason, there's some sort of curse within USF's cross-country program. And despite their best efforts, it just doesn't seem like they're able to mend fences and get things going in the right direction. They did have some, and I'm saying some very loosely, they had some improvements this year. And again, I'm half joking, but I'm half serious. They had a few events that they didn't come in dead last, which we just always consider to be a victory when they're not last. The running joke within the Daily Stampede has been #not last.
He said running joke because we're talking about running sports.
Yes, I did that on purpose. But they came in dead last in the conference tournament championship, however you want to call it. Men's came in 9th out of 9. Women's came in 11th out of 11th. Again, for like the 4th straight year. I really have no idea what goes in and what goes out on that program. I know there is crossover between the track and field athletes and the cross country athletes. So for the long distance runners that USF has for their track team, some of them do compete on cross country, but you will never fire Coach Jenkins for not having a competent cross country program, but it does get a little frustrating that like this team is just perennially bad. And for the war on I-4, for whatever godforsaken reason, they made the women's conference championship like 6 points. And it's usually like the first event that happens for, or it's either the first or it's second to go with alongside volleyball. And so USF is immediately in like a 9-0 hole because we'll never beat UCF in women's volleyball. And UCF is like 10th in women's cross country. We're 11th. And so it's we're on I-4 stupid, but
that's 6 points. And they don't have men, so it didn't matter in the men's side.
Right. It's incredible. I don't know what happens there. Wizard, there could be. There's a lot of focus on track and field competing because track and field nationally is a better, more well-rounded sport that's tracked. No pun intended. Like the NCAA regionals and nationals and everything like that. It's more of a testament to like the strength of a program. So
yeah, what I will add is it's Coach Jenkins on the indoor and outdoor sports part. That's not the running ones, or not the long distance running ones, has created a very, very competitive program now. What they beat Houston last year in the 4x400 men's, which has not happened. Houston's a perennial national title contender. They sent, was it 4 athletes to the national championships in Eugene, Oregon. They performed extremely well, and competitions like the high jump, the 400-meter hurdles, the 4x400, and both men's and women's. So for whatever reason, I don't know why it's hard to run really long. I mean, I know why I can't run really far, very fast. But it's hard. That seems to be the one thing. But Coach Jenkins has really completely flipped that program around in the short time he has, at least in the spring. So we hope to really talk about what they do in the indoor and outdoor championships and their competitions coming up here in the coming weeks. But right. The long distance running is where we're talking is for whatever reason, it's not there. And I was, it's tough. It's hard to do. It's a hard sport, but a program in Florida, I'm not certain what the situation is there, but it's tough to always see them at the bottom of the conference.
I do have a small request for you, Vito. If you can pull up a athlete that I'm about to send you, this guy is going to become my new favorite USF athlete of all time.
Is it new or?
No, he's a pole vaulter on our men's team. But yeah, they
Romaine Beckford?
No. Romaine is a high jump.
High jumper, right?
Yeah. But yeah, so we'll talk about more on track and field, when those seasons get a little closer. But Hector's question, Hector asked, serious question, is it possible to cut some sports to try and build others with proper resources? Yes and no. It is possible. They can do it. I don't think that they're going to. Namely, there's a lot of Title IX implications that happen in those types of sports and legalities and all that stuff. So they wouldn't, it would be very simple for them just to cut both because it's the same amount of scholarships and it's the same amount of, coaching staff and everything. But at the same time, you don't want to do that because of Title IX purposes of scholarship distributions. And if they do, they would probably have to add another sport for both men's and women's to continue the funding, continue how things are done. It's more complicated. And so when you hear of like a school choosing to cut like a football program or something like that, it is a big undertaking to do like a football program. It is a big undertaking to do like a cross country program or a rowing program or something like that. It usually has to do with having to rip up the floorboards and really cut costs. And USF is not at the liberty to cut costs on something just because they're bad at it. As much as we want to do that sometimes.
So but, a lot of those sports are there, but as long as they're competing to an extent, then you kind of have to keep them going. But adding programs like beach volleyball and women's lacrosse is going to be huge, especially for the women's side.
It's all part of the fun. We can't pull them up, but Kobe David, for those that are on TikTok, looks like the dude from Can at Kirkland. Just incredible flow, incredible mustache. He's a pole vaulter, so I can only imagine that his flow is just going to be just very luscious in the wind. Mm-hmm. Boy, we should bring a student athlete on this show at some point, just to show the love. All right, let's see. What I think that's all of our fall sports here.
Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty good on the fall recap.
Yeah, I think we hit everything. Yeah, they got to figure some stuff out there, but we'll be fine going forward.
To go back to this question about how do the new AAC schools stack up, we haven't done any in-depth look, but I can see that Rice was second in the conference, 27-4 overall, 13-1 in conference. North Texas 16-15, 9-5. UAB right behind them, 7-7 in conference, 12-15 overall. Charlotte 5-9, just under them, 11-16 overall, and Florida Atlantic second to last. Sound familiar? 13-13 overall, 3-11. So what we'll do is we'll actually take a look and do a little more research on those programs, see how they stacked up out of conference. But it looks like Rice will actually be a pretty good volleyball program.
Rice is good at everything except for football. Rice and USF are going to be best buddies when it comes to this stuff.
Hey, Rice looked good football this season, and Houston needed a last-minute drive to beat them. And then, of course, Rice won a national championship or a College World Series in baseball. So that'll be fun to have them and the baseball circuit.
Right. So we'll do a brief little talk about the men's and women's basketball team here real quick. We will be talking about them more in depth at times on the Illuminati podcast on your traditional programming. But we hadn't done that in the last couple of weeks because we've been so inundated with news because, football coaching searches typically dominate the news cycle.
And Cruton.
So we'll men's basketball, we'll start out with the tougher pill to swallow, is having a quite up and down year. To say the least, for year 6 under Brian Gregory. Currently sitting at 7-10 overall and a very, very painful 0-4 in the conference. Their 4 losses are very painful to recap because late second half leads that just diminish and deteriorate from their fingertips are always not fun to discuss. They did have a 5-game win streak at one point, beating the likes of Charleston Southern, Northern Iowa, Dartmouth, Hofstra, and New Jersey Institute of Technology. All of which USF was ranked higher than in the net ratings. So no surprises there that they were able to amass that. But they've struggled to start the conference play. There's a lot of gelling issues. It's a lot of the same issues that we've seen in the past under men's basketball under Coach Brian Gregory. Free throw shooting continues to be a problem under our coaching staff, which seems like it transcends just the players. It seems like they could bring in a guy that has never missed a free throw in his life, and for some odd reason, he'll get up there at the Yuengling Center and clank his first on 2. So
it's cursed.
At this point, it has to be cursed in some direction.
Can I throw something out real quick just while you get more into this?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm not sure how many watched the game versus Houston last night, which they transcended, went above their season best for free throw percentage and 3-point percentage. Tyler Harris at 31 points. Even though it was still a loss in the same realm that the past 4 have been. Just say in the chat, do you think that was a satisfying effort, only losing by 6 to the number 1 team in the country on the road? While we do that, Robert, continue.
Yes. I can tell you, if it was year 2 under Brian Gregory, I would feel okay with it. But it's unfortunately it's year 6, and it's if they can continue this positive momentum going into the next game, which thankfully is not against the number 1 team in the country. It is against the preseason team that was picked last and hasn't done as well, East Carolina. If USF can have a good showing against East Carolina, win a conference game, which, by the way, I think is going to be USF's first conference win in men's basketball or football in quite a long time. I think probably a calendar year. So, a win at ECU probably puts you in pretty good favor of, saying, okay, maybe that was their turning point. Maybe they needed the tougher competition to really light it on fire. Tyler Harris, when he's on, he is on it. And, that you can't take him out of the game, off of a cool hand, unfortunately. But again, it's year 6 under Brian Gregory. We can talk about the unfortunate mess that he inherited and the issues that was inherited on that first team that he had. We could talk about the COVID and everything else that was going on, with the Tom Harrion incident and the rebuild of the roster in year 3 after coming off the CBI championship. There was a lot of issues there, and there's probably a dedicated show I could do to talk about that. But at this point, it's not it doesn't feel like it's a win. Or it doesn't feel like an if. It feels like a win. They would make a coaching change, and you might look at it in the next 2 weeks, I would assume. You've got at ECU, you've got against Cincinnati at home, you've got against UCF, and then you've got at Temple over the next 2 weeks. And, you go over in those 4, you probably might need to start, packing bags and making changes. I know that the program is on the wit's end of almost every single fan. There's no good reason why USF is as bad as they are in men's basketball. It doesn't make sense. I will give credit to Brian Gregory. He did everything right this offseason. He addressed every single issue that the team last year had by bringing in the players that he did bring in. He recruits the hell out of high schoolers. Let me tell you, Ryan Conwell is going to be an absolute stud for USF, a true freshman that it was making plays against the number 1 Houston team, against some of the best players in the country. But for some odd reason, that game management just isn't there. It feels a lot like how that Jeff Scott situation was. Recruits the hell out of guys, but that game-to-game situation was just really struggling. So, again, we won't disparage, but we're not going to call for anyone's heads, because I called for someone's head last year and it blew up in my face. But there are issues and they need to be resolved very quickly. And Brian Gregory needs to get above 500 in conference at some point in his career.
It's a tough pill to swallow, because they started the opening of the year, a lot of new pieces. It took a while to kind of get together. Then, they did that string against non-conference opponents. But they started to look good. And then in conference play, they look good to start. They play competitive. And then all of a sudden, it's like the last 3, 4, 5 minutes, they can't buy a bucket. And that kills them, especially a team that's not, shooting particularly well with free throws. Now, last night was different. They shot really, really well. And then a flagrant one was like a 6-point swing, and that kind of turned the whole thing. And Houston, Houston is that they're just as good as advertised. The fact that defense was able to confuse them and make them miss buckets and frustrate them was very intriguing. But it just feels like, even with like football against UF, it's like you need to see the finish, because then even when they're playing really, really well and they blow it, they're not carrying that over to then finish the next one. And at some point, then you just have this giant, you can't get the monkey off your back. It's just like whatever's happening. And they have some fun pieces. Russell Chu is so fun to play, or so fun to watch play. He is so charismatic. I mean, Tyler Harris is one of the best shooters I've seen in a very long time for USF. And early on, he wasn't making threes, and now he is, and he's shooting them from the logo. It's incredible. The Memphis game, he was playing out of his mind. And Keyshawn Bryant's really fun to watch. Ryan Conwell looks like he's going to be a great piece. It's just fitting everything together. Cyril Smith, like fitting everything together to make it work. But like you're right, at some point it's like year 6. What can you do? How can we make this work? So like the ECU game is going to be big. They have a couple games in the next week. We'll see what ends up happening. But you got to use that Houston that Houston loss as ammunition for the future to go, like, we can compete with the number 1 team in the country. We only lost by 6 to the number 1 team in the country on their court. We can go ahead and compete and beat anybody. So I'm interested to see what the squad and what Brian Gregory can do in the rest of conference play. I mean, luckily they don't have to play Houston again because I mean that's just a hard program to play. But like, I'm interested to see, because once Houston leaves Cincinnati, I mean, UCF is having a great year right now. It's going to be a tough basketball league, man. It's going to be tough. Yeah. So, I mean, you almost, I don't even know what you do, because all of a sudden your options become very thin in the league that you're in. That's going to be that's probably going to be a 1-bid league.
Right. It can be a 2-bid league at times. The new programs that are coming in are pretty damn competitive. UAB is on a hot streak right now of consistency over the last couple of years. FAU is off to a historic start for their program. I think they're 15-1.
That's correct. FAU is doing really well.
Right. Rice is doing all right. Charlotte's, I think, off to a pretty okay start as well. There's a lot of you're not going to replace the number 1 team in the country with what Houston has built. You're not replacing that in the new American Athletic Conference, but it's still going to be a competitive conference. You're still keeping a team like SMU. You're still keeping a team like Wichita State. Temple might have to do a restart as well. So if I'm USF, I would probably, both USF and Temple are kind of at odds in right now. That's the old Mexican standoff of which team is going to make the move first. I'm circling that January 25th day. If Temple manages to be the reason why we fire both our men's basketball coach and our football coach, that would be quite a feather in their cap at this point, because I really think that's going to be the difference maker at this point, is that game, that at Temple game on January 25th. They are also at the very wit's end of their head coach. And I think the loser is probably going to be the one going home full time there. So we'll see what can happen there. And, if there is a coaching change that is made, we will, of course, talk about it and address it and do a coaching hot board and do all that here. But it hasn't happened yet. So we're not going to talk about it. And instead, we're going to ignore it and talk about our favorite team on campus. Vito?
Women's basketball, ladies and gentlemen. Another win yesterday against Memphis. Another hard-fought win. And I don't have a picture of one because I don't have one, but they had really cool Los Toros hats that they gave away to attendees of that game. I almost attended. They're really, really cool. I'm going to have to show a photo of what Andy Taylor had, but it's a really cool looking hat. And I love when they do international night, because as we know, Jose Fernandez, his squad, full of international flavor, a lot of players from around the world. And it's really cool that they do this to show awareness to that and how good this team is. And it's excellent that the way this team can, I don't want to say start off slow. They're almost like the opposite of men's basketball, where especially in conference play, they've had the first 4 conference games, they were within 3 or 2 of their opponents at the half. And then they have a monstrous third quarter. They figure it out, and then they rush ahead. So women's basketball is, I actually lost the record. They're 4-0 in conference. What is the total record? 15-4 overall. And their 4 losses were all to top 25 teams at the time, including number 3 Ohio State, who I believe is still undefeated. And they had them on the ropes, and Ohio State took them to overtime. All their losses are on a neutral site, so they're completely undefeated at home, which is huge. This team is really, really good. I know we say that every year with women's basketball, but this team is legitimately good. They have 3 of the top 40. They have 3 top 40 scorers, and Dulcie Fanka Mangiadu, Elena Chinecki, and Sammy Puisis, all shooting above
So
15
close to the
points per
pronunciation
game.
of that. So close. We're gonna get it.
Oh my goodness. I'll never forget when.
Mangiado.
Oh, dang. Is it not Mengiado? Okay, sorry. I remember when Elena Chinecki first played, and it was Seth and I on a podcast, and we it was bad. It was real bad. But Dulcie has completely upped her game this year after Betty Manunga graduated. So she's on the Ann Myers Drysdale National Player of the Year watch list. She's averaging a double-double, 16.9 points per game and 11.9 rebounds per game, and she can take over in the post. And I think Steeg mentioned this as a tweet earlier today, retweeting that article about 3 top 40 scorers, the only team in the country to do it. Those 3 players can all beat you in different ways. So if they have to grind out a game down low, give it to Dulcie and she'll be able to do it. She'll be able to get offensive rebounds and do that. If you need to get someone who could drive to the hoop and also shoot mid-range, that's Elena's game. If you just need someone to be a sharpshooter from beyond the arc, that's Sammy's game. And any of them can beat you. So yesterday they beat Memphis 58-45. It was 29-26 at the half, and Memphis was looking really good. Really, really tough defensive team. Then in the third quarter, jumped out 18-8, and it was off to the races at that point. Wichita State over the weekend, same thing. It was 31-30 at the half. USF was up, and then the third quarter went on a 25-6 run, and a lot of that was from beyond the arc. Temple was their second conference game, same thing, 33-30 advantage. In the third quarter, outscored Temple 26-16. And the big one against Tulane, they were actually down 29-28 at the half, and then jumped out to 21-11 advantage in the third quarter. And Tulane, who's a very good team this season, they were able to beat them. This team, it's hard to find any real concrete weaknesses. They're shooting 35% from 3-point line, 44% from the field, 73% free throw shooting, and they can beat you in a multitude of different ways. They're really fun to watch. If you can get to a game, go out and support this program, go out and support this team. And I mean, I don't know what halftime speech Jose is saying, but I want to hear it because I bet it's going to make everybody run through a brick wall, because those are all incredible third quarters that they have after essentially getting the best from their opponent in the first half.
I'm going to ask Jose to just send me like a halftime speech so I can listen to it in the morning so I can get ready.
Exactly.
Throw that on.
Yeah. The roster's up and down really, really good. I mean, the fact that they're out of conference is, I think, what they said, second or third in the country. They've played a lot of good teams, and all of their losses have been fairly close, outside of the loss to, let me pull it up.
It was like Villanova.
Yeah.
It was at the end of a tournament in Estero.
Yeah.
And
so
I think they were tired.
They beat Georgia Tech. They lost to Michigan, which was their first loss of the season, 63-58, number 22, and then lost to number 23 Villanova, 72-50. But then after that, they beat Texas, and then they lose to number 8 NC State, 65-57, who's a perennial power. So the one that stung was Ohio State, because they had them on the ropes. So we were trying not to do the jinx, and we were trying not to talk about it, and then all of a sudden, they were up by like 6 with the last couple minutes. Ohio State comes back, sends it to overtime, and then Colin was there, and they said that the refs decided to swallow the whistle at the end of the game there. So
it was bad.
They turned around, went to overtime again against number 17 Arkansas, beat them 66-65. Another solid team. They go into the conference play. They are undefeated. So it's just watching this team play. Is incredible. Normally there's a game in there that you go like, I can't, how did they lose that one? Last year was what, Texas San Antonio, or not Texas San Antonio?
It was like UT
Rio Grande. Yeah, something.
They're the Mavericks. That's all I know about them.
Exactly. Where they beat Stanford in the Bahamas, and then that was the game that kind of pushed their season to the brink. But they've answered the challenge. They look really, really good this year. I plan to go to a lot more games, and I'm really excited for Jose's ability to just keep reloading when players graduate. Right. And like he has a plan. He knows where to get his guys, and they just look really, really good.
Mm-hmm. And like we mentioned, they reload like I've never seen a team reload before. And you can see where the depth pieces are and who the future stars of the team are very quickly. Almost every single season, you're so dumbfounded by the post play of Betty Manunga, and then all of a sudden like Dulcie comes into play, and you're like, oh, she's also really good. How are they playing both of them at the same time? And usually that's USF's downfall at times in women's basketball is they'll have the talent, they'll have all the pieces, they'll have depth, and then for some odd reason it stops clicking at some point. But it doesn't feel like that's what this team is capable of this year. It seems like they've all kind of accepted the roles. There's a lot of young gals on the team as well. I think there is I think 6 true freshmen on the team. Or no, there's 4 true freshmen on the team, and then like 2 redshirt freshmen that are on the team as well. So there's a lot of young pieces that are very okay with standing behind and taking a few less minutes here and there. But Jose's subbing everyone in pretty consistently and still getting great output. The biggest one that comes to mind is Carla Brita.
Yep, from Spain.
She's incredible. She's, for a true freshman, like she was one of the best players at the FIBA UEFA women's basketball in Europe. She's incredible. She's as good as advertised, and Maria Alvarez being healthy, I think, is a great step in the right direction for the team. Ariel Wilson's really coming in and getting some good minutes there. And the player that I thought was going to come in and be the next stud is still kind of waiting in the wings, Emma Johansson from Sweden. Watching her play when she was in Sweden, she could probably win the female equivalent of like the Wooden Award at some point. She's really ultra talented and has a lot of finesse to her game, but yeah, she's still waiting in the wings a little bit. Yes, Maria is still not completely 100% healthy. She did come off of an ACL tear, so she's getting some good run, but they're definitely not going to push her. I think she's logged about 13 minutes a game, so about a quarter, which I think is pretty good for coming off of an ACL tear, and they're really trying not to push her. But she's also just kind of the heart and soul of the team as well. So being on the bench and encouraging her teammates, I think also a comfortable spot for her. But I know she's itching to get back on the court and drain threes from the mid court like she always does.
Yeah, and I think you try to ease people in, and I know a lot of other players are getting time in and out, but they definitely have their starting 5 that they want to use to pretty much work the grind. But like Ariel Wilson and Dulcie both came from Memphis, and Ariel Wilson's played a very good season this year. She had 4 assists last night. And Daniela Gonzalez is another freshman that's been getting a lot of good playing time as well.
Right. Because there's a few of these, 3 of them come to mind that are coming off pretty bad injuries. Priscilla Williams, Caitlin McGee, and Maria Alvarez are all coming off of pretty extensive injuries that kind of came into play in that Villanova game where they seemed like they ran out of gas because, frankly, they did. The third game of a tournament, they weren't really itching to wanting to play that game, apparently. So you could kind of see what happened when they ran out of tank on the gas, and they were really pushing it because the game really didn't matter that much, especially when they were down really early, as they were. And I think they made a business decision that game.
And that's tough on those back-to-backs and those preseason tournaments when we were actually kind of concerned when they had to turn around and play Arkansas after Ohio State's like, that's a tough team to play as well. And then you just came off a heartbreak. What's going to happen? And they were able to push forward and get the win. I was mistaken. They have 1 loss on the road, and that was to NC State. Every other loss was in a tournament on a neutral site. So, I mean, this team looks really, really good. They play, I think they go back and play Tulane at home again. So another quality opponent. They'll get Tulane at home, and then on for this Saturday, and then next Wednesday, they travel to Houston to play Houston, who last time I checked is under 500, but is undefeated in conference, which is very interesting. And then they get UCF, who is having a down year currently, the following Sunday, January 22nd, at home.
Good. Um,
Oh,
Hee 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 ho
oh.
ho ho. Yeah, so they're the fun team to watch. Make it out to women's basketball game. They deserve the support. They deserve the fanfare. They deserve all the fun. And boy, do they have some good fucking uniforms too. They best uniforms on campus belong to women's basketball program. But now we'll switch gears, and I do want to mention this one before I forget. I'm not pushing this one towards the end. USF Cheer is competing at nationals again this year. Whether your opinion on cheerleading is a sport or not doesn't matter to me. Fuck your opinion. It's a sport, and we're gonna count it. Back-to-back national champions. Big deal for that program. They've built quite a dynasty led by Heath Rinkus. But in all sincerity, Spirit Squad doesn't get as much love as it should, because those boys and girls have to deal with sitting through crappy football games and crappy men's basketball games, and half empty stadiums and everything like that. But they're always there, and you can see the hard work that they put into the program and their performances and everything like that. I promise if we are able to find a recording of the program that we will plug it on the Daily Stampedes on the house account, because again, they deserve it. Back-to-back national champions, and I think co-ed is a big deal. These are, I mean, again, national champions. You're going up against the Bamas of the world. You're going up against the Cals, the Stanfords, these big time programs that are traditional and have all the fanfare and everything like that. And little old USF is competing right there along with them. So big positive thing that's happening there. So yeah, they're competing tonight, tomorrow, and I think Saturday as well. I think it's actually the entire weekend up until Sunday. There's different categories for co-ed, for all girl, and I think there's different categories depending on the size of the school as well. So you don't get plussed out if you're a small UT San Lojo or something like that. But they're good to support. We love our champion student athletes, just like our football team.
Yeah, and those routines are very difficult. The choreography, the athleticism. It's I know a lot of people poo it, but it's like no, this is a very difficult craft to learn. It's an art and sport. It's like that Ted Lasso. It's like when art and sport combine. That's right up my alley. So yes, Heath Rinkus is the one who made it very famous. So shout out to Heath. Just kidding. So yeah, go USF co-ed cheer. We're really looking forward to seeing how they do this weekend.
Absolutely. And then switching gears and looking ahead a little bit, we're about at an hour, which is where we said we were going to be, but we're going to keep this show rolling as long as we want. We do have the spring sports coming up here in a little bit. Namely, I think men's tennis starts next week or in the next couple of days, and then
men's tennis starts tomorrow.
You're right; it is tomorrow. I am behind on my. I'm looking at the week behind on my composite calendar.
I apologize. Track and field starts tomorrow. Men's tennis starts on Saturday versus Rice.
Right. So one thing to note about the men's tennis and women's tennis, and I'm bringing this one up in specific, is on the USF master plan, there is plans to basically revamp the tennis pavilion and really invest the shit into that program so that they can have nice facilities. Currently, right now, USF's tennis pavilion isn't great. It looks like your neighborhood or your apartment complex is tennis courts, except it's actually maintained and doesn't have giant cracks down the middle. So for programs that have competed nationally and have been storied for us for a while, they're finally getting yes, they don't even have lights. They're finally getting the love and affection that they deserve.
No, lights was UConn baseball.
Right, exactly. So one thing you'll notice about the men's and women's tennis schedule is that there aren't a lot of home games. There are not a lot of games that they're going to be playing at the USF tennis complex. I am led to believe that is for a reason. They're probably doing a lot of field work and landscaping and trying to make sure that they have the correct setup available for when they actually introduce the master plan to improve the facilities and make it an actual Division I tennis facility. That's exciting.
It's very exciting. Almost exciting as this new guest that just popped in. You guys ready? Does Steeg even know what I'm talking about?
I hope I do. There he is.
Colin Sherwin, welcome to the USF Athletics Round-Up, the pilot. Hopefully we don't get canceled after one episode.
Is he here? Oh, he's trying. He's trying. It's okay. This happens to me every time too with my the audio settings don't always want to connect to the correct he's just gonna look pretty for us.
StreamYard just kind of does its own thing. I'm gonna let him roll with this.
He can't hear us. We can talk all the shit that we want.
Yeah, so tennis starts. This is exciting. I'm interested to see. Normally they host a bunch of home games, and that will be very different. I love watching tennis. I know it's very silly. My dad played tennis, and he taught me it's a very hard sport to play. It's really great to watch great athletes play it. I think we have him.
Did we get
Howdy?
Howdy! Look at him in the flesh with his new glasses and everything.
With my new, okay, so here we can like do this the right way. So I bought like 4 pair, right? So like, hold on, I got these.
Ooh,
okay.
Fashion. Oh my goodness gracious! Is that
Fly,
man about to?
right.
Is that man about to go all in on 2s?
He's about to go all in on BYU plus 6.5 tonight. And then we got these.
Ooh, smart
nerds.
daddy over here.
For the nerds, that's what we're here for. And we got these. Hold on. Remember, I am blind as a bat, so if I can't see these, then there's a reason. Oh, I got these. I don't know why I got these. I think they were like.
Oh, they look good though.
Yeah,
Colin, beautiful man over here.
Looking nice.
So anyway, boys and girls, I was just coming to say hi and support the twitching of America. It seems like a good thing for us to be doing in 2023 to find ways to join in with USF fans that are not just flinging shit at each other on Twitter. And so I am all on board with this, and I am here to help and support in whatever you guys do and choose to take this thing in whatever direction you choose to take it. USF doesn't deserve you. Our school is continuing to fail at things like pretty consistently, except for like women's basketball
And sailing.
And what else?
And sailing.
We're good at sailing. But the Tampa side doesn't seem like it's got a lot going on right now that's doing super great. I don't know, Steeg. This is about Olympic sports, right? So we're not going to talk about football?
Nope, we're not talking. And we already, Ron, talked about that. I have a certain date schedule or certain date circled on my calendar for a potential change there. There's about 4 more games until we play at Temple in men's basketball on January 25th. That is the date that I have scheduled, that if we are over for the next 4 games there and include that loss, I think that's where it'll happen. But again, Colin, our little tagline is we're naively optimistic and we're not going to talk about it unless it happens.
But now that you're here, you could say whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about football if you'd like.
Because I don't know if
you
guys have gotten a memo over the last 20 years. I kind of do that anyway, for better and for worse. Sometimes for worse. But I do want to point something out here. The beloved South Florida Bulls, coached by Jose Fernandez, with probably the best post player that we've ever had. Dulcie's preposterous. I mean, she's so good. She's like so ridiculously good. But this is kind of why I jumped on here. I'm looking for the overall rankings right now. And I can't find them. And this is very frustrating.
Nice and prepared, the USF Round-Up.
So Elena is shooting 44% from 3. Sammy is shooting 36% from 3. At one point, she was leading the country in 3-pointers made and 3-pointers taken. I don't know if that is still the case. So this team just plays run, fun basketball. They don't lose. They're 3-4 against the NET top 50. They should be 4-3 because they were up 18 at Ohio State, and then the refs went, "Oh God, we can't let USF beat number 3 Ohio State on a neutral floor that nobody can watch." And then Bulls literally couldn't get a call down the stretch. I posted a video of the last drive of the game. Elena just goes to the rim, gets mauled, no call, and then of course we turned the ball over because she got mauled, and that didn't end up real well.
It was straight up football tackle. It was absurd. And of course nobody could watch it because it's on Flow Sports, which is like a $25 a month charge. It's absurd.
Yeah, it was absolutely ridiculous. All right, here's the full list. So here are the rankings from Her Hoop Stats. South Florida is, God, I'm so bad at this. Why am I so bad at, it's so fun. Oh, yeah, we're number 30. Okay. We're number 30 in the country. We're not going to play another team anywhere close to us in the rest of the season. It's not happening. Like, Tulane's okay. But there's nobody else who's close. And they've beaten 2 top 25 teams already. If they beat Tulane, they'll beat another top 50 team potentially, although they're going to lose a lot of ground because this conference is so bad. So that 3-4 against the top 50 might end up being like 2-4 against the top 50 instead. And those Tulane games are going to drop out because they're going to play them twice. I just don't see how you can't see this as one of the best 25 teams in the country. In fact, I think there is a chance. You could make the argument that, with the exception of maybe Courtney's senior year, that this is probably Jose's best team. And it might even be better than Courtney's senior year because they share the ball better.
It really feels like it.
Yeah,
three players are in top 40 in scoring, and they play 3 very different games. So if they have to, so they can win multiple ways. That's different. That wasn't normally what was going on with these teams. There's always 1 or 2 scorers. Now it's 3, and then you still have a good bench.
And they have changed the way they defend. They've done a lot of things differently. Of course, as I jump on with you guys, I have BYU plus 6.5, and Gonzaga goes on a 10-0 run as soon as I jump on. So fantastic job here. I'm just the USF jinx. The USF jinx even carries over to the Twitch channel, which is crazy sauce.
That's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, but this team, 30th in overall weight, 34th in offense, 21st in defense. This is not USF women's basketball. They're not exactly known for stopping people, and they're getting stops now. I think Dulce's just gives them a way to beat people that nobody else could. Now, if they run into South Carolina, who just has big bodies all over the place, they're going to struggle. If you catch that team in like the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8, it's going to be tough. North Carolina State's tough too because of their size. And remember, this is all regionalized, so they're going to stick all the teams, in one quadrant, even though they really shouldn't. So there are a couple of tough outs for them to get through. But of all of Jose's teams, just the balance that they have and the way that it's set up, this might be their best chance to get to a Final Four. And it's not a great chance, but there's a chance. There's a better chance than I've seen, I think, any year since Courtney's senior year.
And they did. So there was 2 notes on that. They had a recent projection come out, and they had USF 6th as a 6th seed.
And that Ohio State game is going to cost them the chance to host.
Right, exactly. Which unfortunate, but maybe some cards fall the right way. But there was a piece on the Athletic earlier about how there's more parity now in women's college basketball than there has been ever. Like, if there is a time where a non-traditional program it can make a run at a championship, it is within the next 4 to 5 years. And it seems like USF is one of those teams that can really benefit from that parity where, the SEC is no longer, just going to be run through South Carolina. The Big East is not just going to be run through UConn. I'm blanking on the Pac-12 is not just going to be run through Stanford. Those teams are going to have losses going into the NCAA tournament now. Those teams are going to have weaknesses going into the NCAA tournament now. We will probably never see an undefeated national champion ever again in women's basketball.
Basketball, it's tough. First of all, fellas, William Kennedy, I do have
Hey,
one
bud.
question for you, Colin, as we delve into this.
Mm.
Do you think the not being snubbed from the top 25 is putting a chip on their shoulder to make them have this edge that makes them look elite, or does that not even matter?
I don't know. I'm more pissed about it than they are. I think it's just like silliness. What do you want them to do? You know what I mean? Like, what else can they do?
They have the second or third best at a non-conference schedule. Like, or
I mean,
edge. What are you going to do?
Don't blow an 18-point lead to Ohio State. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
don't do that.
number
That was
13 in the
bad.
country undefeated.
But like
That's
they kind of, and it's hard to convince voters that like, no, really, I was there. It was really shitty. Like you can't. That's not really like a valid excuse that flies. And then the next day, I don't think they played very well at all. But that to me is their most impressive game of the season, was that they came out still shell shocked from what happened with Ohio State in the first half. They didn't play very well. I think they were down 9 at half. And they came back and they beat number 17 Arkansas because they just gritted. They gritted and they grinded and they said, all right, we're not going home 0-2 here. We've dropped too many too early this season already that we should have won. And so to get that one, I think was really huge. But the losses are to a 22-point loss to a Villanova team that I can't justify that. That was,
I think
it's a different Villanova
yeah.
But
it's a different Villanova than their
that wasn't a back-to-back after losing to Michigan on a neutral site. So run out of gas?
Possibly. But also, like, this isn't Harry Paredes Villanova. This is a different type of Villanova team that's not running the old same. Harry used to get all of his kids. He was the coach at Villanova for like 40 years. And he used to get all like a decent chunk of his kids from the high school that I started at. I finished high school in Orlando, but the one I started at in Philadelphia, used to get all of his kids from there. And they ran the same system for 40 years. And every time we played them, Jose just torched them because it was not exactly a progressive way to play basketball, shall we say. Harry's a legend, like, college basketball Hall of Famer for sure, but like just not, I mean, Jose would just come out and torch those teams, just better athletes and a much more up and down and fun system to watch. The NC State game hurts, but that's just, again, that's a really tough matchup because of the size of NC State and then Ohio State. But then what else do you want them to do? They're going on the road. They're beating people. They're beating people in neutral floors. They're doing everything that you can reasonably ask a team to do. And I think, it's not like I don't think they're going to be ranked with another win over Tulane this week. Like, I still don't think they get there.
Teams in front of them have to start losing.
Teams in front of them have to start losing, and they've got to kind of run out. So, like, if they run out, it'll be 31-4. I don't think there's a huge difference in terms of seeding between like 31-4 and like 29-6.
That's
you know what I mean?
I think that the crummy thing is you can still get a seed where you're still, playing the number 1 and number 2 seed in the second round. And that is just what kills them. It's a team that should be able to go to the Sweet 16, Elite 8. And it's like, they can't, you run into you run into the number 1 national seed. Well, what are you going to do in the second round?
So if you're a 6 right now, okay, let me check out the NET. So the NET is not the best way to decide these things. But
yeah, I was about to say the net ranking has USF 32nd.
Yeah.
The team that is ranked 31st is Arkansas,
and we beat them.
Lost
but NET is, but you can't pitch about NET. And here's what will continue to happen because the Arkansas will continue to play an SEC schedule. They're going to climb, and USF is playing in a conference. Not that I'm sad to see, Coach Zone, Zone is for cowards over up the street leave, but like that team's bad now. We've beaten Tulane now, I believe, 20 out of 21 or 21 out of 22 times in a row.
It's like 27 out of 28. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. But there's no one else in the league that's competitive. There's not another team that you can like in conference play.
So Wizard brings up Tulsa, who's 3-0 in conference, but
they're terrible. They're not good.
Yeah.
I mean, if we lose one, it'll be on us most likely. Right now, if you were a 6 seed, you'd get you would play an 11 at somebody else's place, and you would probably win that game. And then you would play the 3 seeds are Ohio State, who you can beat, Oregon, NC State, who you probably don't want to match up with again, but like showed you can keep it close at Iowa State. So
they beat Oregon last year. Not that different team, obviously.
And it's tougher when you're going to be on their floor, because the other two were not. But and also the NCAA does try to avoid. I believe that is one of the factors. I forget in women's basketball, but I think trying to avoid a regular season. So they would probably, if they were just going straight by the net as their ranking, they would probably play Oregon or Iowa State. Well, Sabrina's not at Oregon anymore, thank goodness.
She's so good. She's so fun.
She's so good.
There's people who dominate, and then there's Sabrina. Oh my goodness,
incredible. But we are gonna get back on track here because we do need to wrap this up at some point. Because I need to go to bed. Because I have to drive my lovely girlfriend to the airport tomorrow morning at 4:45. So we'll see. We'll see how much sleep I'm able to get here tonight. But quickly, kind of looking ahead to the upcoming weekend. Vito kind of already alluded to it. Track and field starts tomorrow. They have the Jimmy Cairns Invitational in Gainesville. So we'll have kind of a stacked cast of track and field teams there and programs. So that'll be interesting to see how they match up. That's going to be all weekend as well, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Men's tennis kicks off against Rice, like we talked about. They're playing in Boca Raton, so there's a little tournament happening down there. Women's basketball, that aforementioned matchup against Tulane, happening at home Saturday at 7 p.m. That'll be a great matchup and a good decisive victory, hopefully, to continue climbing those net rankings. Sunday, men's tennis, again, tournament. They're playing UC Santa Barbara. And then men's basketball with probably the stinker of the week against ECU. That'll be the sickos basketball game of the day. I'm probably guaranteeing that. That is two very bad teams playing against each other. That is in Greenville, so a road matchup for them. And then finally on Monday, men's tennis wraps up that little Boca Raton tournament with the hosts, FAU. So we'll get a good look at the new and improved USF men's tennis team this weekend and see if they can make a good run for it. Depending on when we do this show, we do have a double header, sort of a double header coming up for basketball. Men's basketball has a game against Cincinnati at home on Wednesday, and the same time, women's basketball is on the road against Houston. So again, interesting matchups. Houston's undefeated, but below 500, which doesn't make sense. And Cincinnati is a hot and cold team, so we'll see what the men's team can do there.
Yeah, we'll likely do this again a week from today, next Thursday, so we'll be able to talk to round up all of that in the next week. We did mention we'll probably do something in the off season, talking volleyball, just to chat with Colin. I don't want to put him on the spot about the volleyball team right now, but we'll talk about that later on what we think.
I want to see a schedule. I really don't.
So we'll wait a little longer and probably push that a little more to the off season. But it's always good to have Colin on here. I'm really glad that he was able to talk about that, because he mentioned he wanted to talk about women's basketball, especially what the rankings are looking like. And it just stinks in a sport like this that you can't, at some point, you just plateau with who you're playing. Cat came back. Anyway, Steeg, take us home.
Well, there's one more segment that we need to get to, Vito, and this will be a quick little segment, but it's going to be our crowning headliner show piece here. It's a little segment we like to call Fellas and the Bellas of the Week. Colin, surprise. So every week, to especially highlight our student athletes here at the University of South Florida Olympic Sports, we want to at least highlight the Fella of the Week. So, your men's top performer, and your Bella of the Week, your women's top performer. Because obviously we had an entire seasons of sports happening prior to this, we want to make sure that we properly give credit where credit is due. So with that being said, Vito, who is your fella of the fall sports season? Could be any of those lovely sports that happen: men's soccer, men's soccer, cross country.
I have our Iron Man from men's soccer, I got rid of the thing. Defenseman Sal Mazzioni. Might have said that name
Mazzaferro.
wrong. That's it.
Sal Mazzaferro. Yep, you're good.
Who's now drafted as a member of Austin FC, who played nearly every minute of possible game action for men's soccer this year, and is now playing professionally. And shout out to my friends who have an Austin FC podcast. So I will tell them to watch out for our Iron Man Sal, but he is my fella of the fall.
Quite the niche podcast coming from another niche podcast. But of course, the Bella of the fall sports season, I think, is with no contest or anything like that. Kiara Hahn was just Colin looked surprised with that one. Kiara Hahn was an absolute workhorse for USF women's soccer. Although they had a down season, she was lights out the entire time. United Soccer's all-region team member as a midfielder, well-deserved, and she should be the new star of the program going forward. Colin, putting you on the spot. Anyone you want to call out or mention by name here?
Do winter sport athletes count?
Depends which sport, but go ahead.
Dulcie's the best post player that's ever played at USF. It's not close.
Ooh.
Yeah,
and Betty just graduated last year.
And Betty, and I even said that, Betty was unbelievable. The ability to find, a post like that, is just a testament to how but Dulcie's better. She's just better. Her footwork is unbelievable. Defensively, she's improved so much. But if you run, 2-game, any kind of high pick and roll with her, or they run a lot of that Spain action with her and Sammy as the back picker, when they run that, that's just lethal. It's so bad. She can shoot from 15 feet. She's got all the moves in the post. She's amazing. And so I just wish she could play one more year. That would be my goal, because man, you put her on this team, find a way to get her one more year. And this team, holy crap.
Find a way.
But yeah, find a way. Come on, compliance.
Excellent.
Find a way.
Bring it on. Yep.
Totally in the tank for one team here, obviously. So.
All of it. Well, thank you, Colin, for hopping on here and giving us some wonderful insight. We'll definitely have you back on for volleyball talks here in the future. USF hockey is playing UCF on the 21st. They're giving away cowbells. That's going to be chaotic. Oh, God. Don't know if that's going to be the best idea in the world. Those things are going to end up on the ice.
That sounds incredible, but go fellas from USF hockey. We love those guys too.
But we're at an hour and 23 minutes for the first show. I hope in the future they're going to be a little bit shorter. But from seriously, from myself, from Anthony Vito, from Colin Sherwin, this is the USF Athletics Roundup. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Go Bulls.